Oscar Palema.
Look at that.
Wow.
Delmo.
Happy U.S. Open Round 1 day. Welcome back to Over the Cap. I don't think there's going to be many other topics to talk about besides the United States Open, hence where we're going with the Stars and Stripes. And if there's anybody that's going to be critical of the U.S. Open, it's that guy. I mean, John, first of all, nice haircut, nice and fresh for tonight.
Thank you very much.
Looking very dapper as always.
Appreciate it,
dude. So before we go to the Open, I saw you were watching my Masters tournament this weekend. What'd you think?
I thought that what'd you have, 135 entries or
135
something?
entries, not bad, right?
Yeah, I like the idea of the length of the pattern. I like the way you addressed it at the start of it. Two fantastic bowlers for the title. I mean, a lot of other big names up there. Am I safe to say that the highest left-hander finished outside the cash number, which was 16th?
Yeah, so that was the only thing that I had a problem with. So there were that I counted out of the 135, I only had 17 lefties to bowl. So,
which in that respect, what did it take to make it?
32 over was the number. And then there were two lefties that were in the alternate roll-off at plus 29. And then below that was another lefty at 19 over. And then there was some 76-year-old man at -6 right after that.
Right.
So,
so I mean, not for nothing. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I've already heard that I wiped it out. Wiping the left out is the high lefty being 150 under. That's wiping the left out.
Totally.
Those two lefties are a hit away from making the number at 40, 45, 50 over. It just sucks, And honestly, on a shorter pattern, I thought the left would have been a little more friendly. I did.
Well, it goes to show you that, it's not always about left and right. And, I'll give you a prime example. The lefties say they were shut out. They weren't shut out. But in a flip side respect, what did the tournament leader qualify shooting for the 5 games?
189 over.
So the tournament leader out-averaged the tournament leader, or the leading righty out-averaged the high lefty by 40 pins a game, or 30 pins a game.
Yeah, give or take a couple.
So what that there says is that, in a place like Strathmore, high friction bowling center, older AMF, SPL, or HPL, I'm not even sure what they're using these days, but it does go to show you that perhaps in the early going, there wasn't as much hold in the middle of the lane as one would expect.
Yeah.
And typically as the right develops, because there's more of them, there does create a little bit of a hold spot in a spot that the left-handers don't have that luxury because, like you said, there's only X amount in the field.
Yeah.
Even if they are following each other, respectfully. So I get both sides of the coin there. Yeah, it would have sucked to bowl my heart out to shoot 20 over and miss the top 16 by a few sticks, and then have to look and say, Jesus, I couldn't, there's no way that guy's 30 pins better than me a game. But that's the case every single week that we go out there. And when the field's 135 and there's 17 lefties, you're really only supposed to see 2 in the number, if that.
Yeah.
So
they're just one hit away. It's not, like I said, it's not like they were wiped out. It's just unfortunate. It's just one tap away, one open away, whatever you want to call it. But it sucked that I did not have one in the finals. That's the only thing that
never in any world would I have ever thought that a 37-foot pattern, a lefty doesn't crack the top 16.
100%.
I thought for sure, if anything, it would favor the righties with longer patterns, I would think. I mean, But no, 37 feet. I'm kind of surprised to not see one or two lefties really have it. For
Exactly.
5 games.
And it was weird too because it was 37 feet at like 4.5 to 1, and they played a lot flatter than 4.5 to 1 for some reason.
I was gonna say with those scores that I saw, they must have played harder than 4.5 to 1.
Yeah. The only thing that I could rationalize it with is they did oil them Friday night, so they sat all night. They got flatter as the night went on, obviously.
Sure.
Strip re-oil Saturday afternoon for a night league. Strip re-oiled for Sunday morning league. Strip re-oiled put my pattern down for the finals on Sunday afternoon. So maybe that, they had a little bit of lane memory. The scores were a lot higher Sunday in the finals. But very surprising that there were no lefties and that the gutter did not play on the left side of the lane either. That was very weird.
Yeah, that's very tricky. And once you force those lefties in anywhere where the righties lay down point is, then it's really death to Smoochie.
Yeah. So and Ray's to speak of it, he is 100%. It's literally you can see the flame coming off the ball in that building.
Yeah, that's what we were saying earlier. That's such old. I don't know if it's SPL or HPL, but whatever the lane bed itself is over there, yeah, it definitely. I struggled getting the ball through the front part of the lane there when I was in my teens.
Yeah,
I can only imagine what it's like now that I'm almost 40.
And I'll tell you what, Fury, there is not a better player in the state of New Jersey than John Fury. He is unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
His commitment to the game, his work ethic, everything that he's been doing now, for his whole career, but really, really blossoming these last 3 or 4 years. He's walking around with the complete and utmost confidence. It's really awesome. Needed new lanes, got carpets.
Welcome to Bolero.
Yeah, no shit. Oh, wow. Strathmore's a Bolero center now?
Yeah.
Oy.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. You know what's not a Bolero? You know what's not a Bolero center?
Howell Lanes.
Woodland.
It is not. You are correct. I believe it's a Royal Pin Center.
Woodland is the talk of the bowling world today, at least.
Go anywhere you want with this one, man.
So 49 feet at 1 to 1. How are you playing that? Throwing it at the head pin and praying? Come on. I would almost try and play it the way I would play the gutter, like the way I would play the rail. Like, in other words, if I'm bumped and I'm trying to fly it on 2, 3, 4, like ideally I'm looking almost in the gutter to hit 2, 3, 4, but I know I can't miss a fraction left, right? Yeah.
Because if I miss a fraction left, it's going in the moat.
Yeah.
And in the same respect, it forces you to really get through it at the bottom, because if you shortcut it at all, you might pick 3 off the right, or in the right-hander's case, 3 off the left. So I would probably go with that mentality and just migrate everything closer. I'd almost probably start with the rule of 31. I would go to, if it's 49 feet in length, what is that? 19, is that 20?
18-ish? Yeah, right around there.
I'd probably pretend like 18-ish was the gutter.
Yeah.
Or actually, I would pretend that's like 15 and a half, 16 was the gutter. And I would almost try and fade it from 18 to 16, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and to don't lose the 1-2.
Yeah. And the hardest part about a pattern of that length is the second it's off your hand, what you're getting at the end.
God, yeah.
There is no, this one's going to back up and trip a 6, or this one's going to tilt off the end of the pattern and not 3, 7, 9. From the time it hits the dots, forget the arrows, exactly what you're going to leave.
So have you looked at the scores today? Are you following it?
I've been following it all day because I'm always intrigued by patterns like this. I remember the 50-foot TSC pattern, but that was actually relatively easy. It was lighter volume. It wasn't 1 to 1. But I was curious to see how dreadful they were going to be today, and they are fucking dreadful.
So where do you want? So they're three blocks in? No, they're 2 blocks. Yeah, they're 3 blocks in.
Yeah. A and B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A and B is
done with 8, and C's on the lanes right now.
So Thomas Larson is leading here at 149 over.
Yep.
Now, the only surprise that I saw, and in the history of the U.S. Open, as far as anybody, the left is always blocked out in this tournament. What, there 7 lefties that won the U.S. Open, basically? 7 or 8?
And I would say 4 of them are in the last decade and a half.
Yeah. Rhino, Simonelli, Scroggins.
And
did
Butters
win?
I think he won the. Yeah, he won the U.S.
He won the Masters.
The Masters. Yeah, I'm wrong. So okay,
so
But
Okay.
yeah,
So
they're not as brutal on the left as they were for like the Cavalier 40-foot flat
no.
years.
So
So
Jesper's in second at 129 over. And then if you look down the line here, I don't see another lefty until Buttriff at 30 over.
Matt
Well,
Sanders.
I'm sorry. Buttriff is bowling now, so he doesn't count.
Matt Sanders, I think, is in the top 10 as well.
Sanders is no. Matt Sanders is 10 over.
Oh, he's 10 over. Okay.
10 over.
I feel like he must have bowled a poor seventh or eighth game then, because I feel like he was higher up than that.
Yeah, he went 160, 210, 220, 200, 90, 170, 220, then 2-0 for the end to get to 10 over.
Oh, then never mind. Okay,
Yeah,
shit.
so Wesley Lowe plus
Wesley's
4.
up there. Simonelli's close too.
Yeah, I don't know where I don't see Simonelli up here.
I think he's maybe 20 under or so. But the
That's
cut
fine.
number through the first two squads for 24th is, I believe, 35 or 36 under.
Well, right now the cut line for 24th is plus 12.
Well, that's with C squad
Yeah, that's
completing
with C squad.
one game. At the completion of just A and B, 24th spot was 35 under. And there was only, I believe, 13 players over. I think Marshall or somebody, Matt Ogle was around even. But
Yeah, Ogle's minus 6.
But as far as what, first off, you want me to start with the negatives or the positives?
Go with the negative. You know what? We'll do good news first. Go with the positives.
What's up, Ian? Good to see you.
There's a good guy.
Yeah.
One of the good ones there.
All right. The negatives, did you say first?
Go with the positives. I mean, I have a lot of negatives with this too.
The positives are, based off day one, the pattern doesn't favor any kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that long of an oil pattern, it might give the upper hand to the crankers, but or other game. But like Thomas Larson's a dead stroker. There's lefties in the top 10. There's two-handed righties. There's high rev righties. There's more direct righties. There's all kinds of different bowling games floating around the lead, the number on the outside looking in, but relatively close. So the mixture is very good with the 108 bowlers that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea that if each other pattern holds true to the way this one is, every single day is a complete crapshoot. You have absolutely no idea who's going to win this. Yeah. And honestly, it's going to boil down to the guys that are the most mentally tough, which is one aspect of the U.S. Open that's always been a constant. And I think it's why it's such a respected event to win. So anybody who can keep their head when all about theirs are losing theirs, Rudyard Kipling reference there, is the guy that's going to wind up making it out all the way to the top. Because at this point, all these guys are good enough and they can understand ball motion enough that it's really going to, when the tournament leaders when there's two guys averaging over 218 after day one, and the cut number is averaging 192, that's all. You were talking about this earlier, the difference of seeing one hit or one spare. And to have to focus that hard on every single shot that you execute for 4 or 5 days straight, that's a lot of mental grind, a lot more mental grind than it is physical grind. And any bowler that has experienced that knows this.
Yeah.
So I do like that. I like that idea. I also like something that I despise simultaneously. I like the intimacy of the event. I like the idea that spectators can come in and there's only 36 bowlers bowling a squad, which is also the exact same reason I absolutely hate it, because who the hell wants to walk into Woodland Bowl, a 70-lane bowling alley? They got 10 lanes aside for practice lanes. They got 10 lanes put aside and blacked out for a paddock. And then they got 36 bowlers bowling on 60 lanes.
It's like you're walking into a senior league on a Tuesday morning.
Exactly. And like seeing if there's scratch offs to play at the front desk or fresh coffee made. But I do think that for the fan, it's got to, as long as they space them out enough in those 60 lanes where you don't have to be 6 deep to watch guys like Duke or whoever else you want to go watch bowl, I think that it's cool that it's more intimate for the fans if fans are showing up. And in a place like Indy, they usually do.
It has to be showing up there. Yeah. And Ian's point was great. I would have loved to see how Duke would have played this too. Well, that's the shot maker of all shot makers right there. And at age 60, Norman would find a way to get to the 1-3 and get to over somehow on that. I think we all can agree with that.
Absolutely.
All right. What's the negatives?
Well, the negatives is the same as the
36.
I don't like. I still don't like the 108 players. I think that it's really just too few of bowlers. There's too many names in that field of 108 that I don't really know.
Mhm.
So that's already one thing that makes me go, well, like this is you're going to pay X amount of money and all this prestigious shit for who are these guys? Which even though I respect their ability, I'm like I don't think they're more deserving to be there than other guys. Just like I mentioned last time I was on your show. I guess I don't like the fact that once they go to pattern 4 and they make the cut, that's the pattern that they stick with all throughout
For the
match
duration.
play.
Yeah, that's a little bit stupid too, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like let's take Thomas Larson and Jesper Svensson, for example. They both like lapped the field today for the first 8 games of qualifying.
Yeah.
And they never get to see this pattern again.
No.
So if they get to pattern 4 and pattern 4 favors two-handed righty crankers,
Give
all of a
Belmo the green
sudden-
jacket again.
all of a sudden Jesper and Thomas Larson go down, and here come Anthony and Belmo.
Yeah.
So I don't like the idea that I would feel that there should be some kind of incentive. Like if you lead qualifying, day 4 you bowl pattern 4, but on the next day of match play, the tournament leader gets the option.
Chooses the pattern.
Yeah, or it's something like that. So yeah, that's a negative on my end that I'm not crazy about. I don't like the idea.
Tomorrow is the middle finger pattern.
Mm-hmm. Saw that
Tomorrow
one too.
is that disaster.
Yeah, and this is interesting because if you look at that pattern again, Mike.
Yeah.
Typically, what they'll do with lane patterns is they'll offset the pattern, but they'll offset it to the right side of the lane.
Yeah,
they'll typically offset it to the right side of the lane because there's more righties. What they're doing here is they're giving lefties more shim, which will be there longer, and they're giving righties less hold in the early going. I actually, believe it or not, think that's going to be a relatively high scoring pattern tomorrow.
Really?
I do. I think compared to today, yeah, I would say significantly higher tomorrow.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, and then pattern 3, right? I have this here. Pattern 3 is the longer one, right?
I only saw patterns 1 and 2. I haven't seen any other patterns released yet.
I don't know. They're released somewhere, but tomorrow is the middle finger pattern.
Yep.
Now, the only other, I guess, and I'm looking at this thing now. So there's 2 title holders, national title holders that are down the bottom, which how good are Russo and Christian Ascona? And they're basically your red leaders. I mean, that should never happen. Should never happen.
I will say this. Those guys are reliant on a lot of, like, for instance, Matt Russo, fantastic, excellent bowler, but Matt's a little too reliant on the ball going right to left. He likes to belly it in the front part of the lane. And because his thumb is in the ball, even though he's two-handed, it's very hard for him to get dead up the lane.
He can't play projected up the boards.
Right. So in his situation, even if he's throwing urethane, even if he's got the slightest bit of head belly, he's already going to be struggling. And Christian Ascona, again, we saw him have a pretty solid season after, he kind of just came out of nowhere,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he's another guy that's softer ball speed, a little reliant on down lane motion, and you've never really seen him go up the lane unless it's with urethane, which was seemingly not in play today. So it doesn't surprise me that those guys are towards the bottom. I was kind of surprised to see Wes Malott towards the bottom.
Yeah, I'm looking at Wes now.
I thought he would have bowled a little bit better today.
Wes is 115 under.
Yeah, that one actually really, really surprised me. I thought if anything, him getting a little bit older with that fantastic wrist action at the bottom, but like slightly slower ball speed. And he's always been excellent at keeping it on line, especially in the front part of the lane from anywhere he plays. I would have expected him to be higher on day 1.
Prather was another one.
Totally another one.
Prather was another one.
It's crazy, man. Like, I almost want to go back and look at their history and see, like, what is Chris Prather's previous success on longer oil patterns or 1-to-1 ratios or whatever it is? Because, I mean, that kid is so gifted and so talented. It's shocking to me to ever see him struggle.
Now, I guess the big surprise of the day was the right fielder, the former American League MVP, and the bowler of the decade are tied after one round at the U.S. Open. And Mookie had the high game of the block. With
Yeah, 234.
Unbelievable is that?
I think it's unbelievable that 234 is the high game of the block. That's another thing that I don't like about the U.S. Open. There's a difference between hard and ridiculous. And when the high game on the U.S. Open block one day is a clean game with 3 doubles, that's like it's a little too snotty.
You know what's funny? One of our real good friends is there. He's not bowling, Lee Vanderhoff. And Lee had texted me earlier, and I asked him what he saw, and he goes, "I'm going to read this to you. He's already seen 4 to 5 clean 180 games in the block. That was in the morning. 180 clean.
That's crazy.
It's like you're bowling the Peterson almost.
Yeah. Shit.
And here is pattern 3. This is 39 feet. It's just 1-to-1.
Oh, so they took the U.S. Open pattern and shortened it by a foot?
They shortened it by 1. They shortened it by 1 foot because Carolina was 40 feet 1-to-1. So now this is 39 1-to-1.
That will be the pattern that the lefties go south.
Absolutely, because there is no belly on that one whatsoever.
That'll be a grind for 10 over or 10 under day. You might get one lefty that just finds a trick and bowls their absolute heart out and gets to 60 over. That's
asking for a lot.
That is a nightmare, that pattern, dude. That's ugly just to look at.
And then
at least 49 feet, I know I could yank it, and it's not going to miss. Like, it's not going to hook to the right gutter. If I miss in on that, it might go in the right gutter.
Taking 3 off the right on that one. You are
right, totally.
Looking more here. You know who had a good block today? Grandpa Barnes.
Oh yeah,
Chris bowled phenomenal, 81 over. That's fantastic.
And that goes right back to this is the tournament that you need the biggest brain. And if you've got the biggest brain mixed in with one of the biggest talents, which Chris Barnes obviously has, I mean, I did a poll on my show, and I said whoever picks the winner of the U.S. Open gets a free bowling ball from me.
Okay.
And for anybody listening tonight, you could still go to that show from last week and put your guess in, because if you're the first person to say a name and nobody else has said it, your vote still counts.
Okay.
But nobody picked Barnes on my show, and I was shocked. Like, how could nobody write Chris Barnes' name? I mean, this is his bread and butter tournament. It's what his brain lives for, just dissecting every shot every day, 100% focus. It's the same way Little Monticelli was, or still is, I should say. Yeah, coming in, what is he in 5th through day 1? Or
Barnes is he's 4th right now. He's 4th right now.
Nice.
I'm actually going to go put Barnes in there, but I love Barnes for this one. One of your guys from Vegas bowled really well. I think he led the Dallas.
Dallas Leong. Mm-hmm.
And I saw a clip of him today just throwing it at the head pin, basically.
Well, Dallas is, you know how they the guys from like the Buffalo and the Western New York area, they all kind of have that trick roll. And I'm talking about guys like Ryan Simonelli, Joe Chacon, Brad Angelo, Ryan Schaefer. They all kind of have like that funky
voodoo roll.
That voodoo roll, but it works.
Yes.
Dallas Leong is a spin biscuit. Like, he spins the ball. And whether the numbers say it or not, and the lines on his ball don't track like a spinner and all this other stuff, he spins it.
Now, when you say spinner, you mean like Tom Baker spin or like something like that?
Yeah, but like with an open wrist.
Not like Emmett Shoots.
Not here. No, not as bad as Emmett Shoots. But imagine like Tom Baker if he had a more flexible, open, wrist, like floppy wrist in the back.
Okay.
So, and Dallas, like the ball never, ever reads the fronts. And so he's got a decently high rev rate with that spinner type release.
Mm-hmm.
And he opens his shoulders a shit ton, but he never, ever throws the ball really far to the right. So he probably created some hold, I would guess, because his ball is legit hydroplaning for the entire duration of the lane. So I would assume that the reason he got 2 extra hits a game was because when he yanked it, he 4-pinned. He didn't big 4.
Yeah, he left the makeable.
Yeah.
Here's a question.
Today, absolutely not.
No way. Not today.
No way. Tomorrow, there's a chance for a 300.
I can see it. I can see it more in match play, John.
Yeah, once you're down to the 24 guys with the best look, and they've seen pattern 4 now 2 and 3 times, you're going to see the numbers jump considerably there.
There's pattern 4.
Interesting.
Pattern 4.
How long is that one?
41, 1.75 on the right, 1.5 to 1 on the left.
I could go anywhere.
And there's like almost like a speed bump in the middle of the lane.
Well, they certainly put some time and effort into designing these bad boys.
Is this a Nick Hoglund design?
You got me, dude. No
Nick
idea.
Hoglund is known for just a load of shit when he designs patterns.
It might be a Greg Tack pattern.
See, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Like Greg Tack and all that crap he puts down, that's very similar to this. Do you think this is good or bad that they're this hard? Yes, it showcases their talents, but I mean, if you're John and you have your wife and your 2 kids that are obsessed with bowling, you're paying $20 a pop to walk in the door of Woodland Bowl to watch Belmo, Simonson, Troop, Butters, right? And you're watching these guys bowl 175, 185 every game.
Go
ahead.
I'll give you a comparison about how I feel.
Okay.
Do you like the home run derby?
The old school home run derby, yes. Yeah, still I do. Yeah, I do.
How come?
It's just fun. It's just
why?
It's batting practice, and it's these guys are just going to hit it as far as they can. That's all their job is to do.
Do you think next year, if they changed it to the ground out derby?
Hey, hold on. Breaking news. Sorry.
Oh.
We have a 290 in the wood at the Open.
Nice.
Do we know who this is? Thomas
Keiko. I know that name. Or Tomas Keiko. I definitely know that. I've seen the kid bowl once.
He's from Finland. I'm looking at he's 26 over after 1. And if he goes for 290, he's at 100 over for 2. Jesus Christ. All right. So continue. The ground out derby.
If they changed it to the ground out derby next year, where they took nothing but shortstops and they put them out there, and instead of them throwing batting practice, they were throwing it to themselves and hitting grounders, and they had to see how many times they could throw the ball to first base and get out an imaginary runner in the same amount of time as a home run derby round, do you think it would be as enjoyable?
No, it's like watching paint dry.
Okay. That's how I feel about when you invite people to come and watch the greatest talent that our sport has ever seen, and you bring all these people in to watch them bowl 150. Look at how many guys bowled 130 today. Sean Rash, John Perez, there was a 120 or a 130 by Justin Bone. There was the same thing by Brandon. Everybody in there is like grinding their ass off to shoot 2-0, 190, 210, 2-0, 210 to try and shoot 50 or 60 over. That's not fun.
No, it was very
hard.
Easy. It was very easy to find 150 today.
Yeah.
Very easy.
It gets to a point that hard is one thing. Impossible is absurd. It's too absurd. And hopefully this is by far the toughest of the patterns. Again, I'm sure a batch of guys will find that on the 39-foot pattern, and this should certainly be the lowest scoring pattern. But again, it's still too early to predict. But so far, as a spectator, I'm not coming back tomorrow to watch. Of course not. Oh, so tomorrow, if I want to watch Chris Barnes, I got to be here at 9 a.m. instead of 1, and then I only get to watch him bowl 8 games. Okay. But then if I got to come back the next day, I got to wait till 7 p.m. And what if you're going to shoot another 8 190 games? No, thanks. I'll stay home.
And by the way, bowl.com was broken today, or whatever that is, whatever the live feed, the live stream subscription from the USBC or PBA is, that was down.
Oh,
so like the scores are low enough, and now you can't watch the guys on the internet bowl 150 every game. It's like a double whammy for you.
Yeah, it's like not being able to gamble at South Point Casino on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, the betting windows are closed on a Super Bowl.
Our betting windows are closed until the game's over. You can't have that happen, especially with all the other things you've already changed. And like, if you're going to focus on these 108 bowlers, you better make sure everything is right.
The U.S. Open shouldn't be a wall. I agree with that.
No, it
shouldn't be impossible. There shouldn't be super easy, but they shouldn't be like almost like unhittable, right?
Well, that's what they are. Is they're virtually unhittable.
What was the point of having these different patterns every day? Like, why did they do this? And this is kind of recent that they did this.
I would think because of the different kinds of games in the world today. You have lefties, you have righties, you have two-handers, you have strokers, you have tweeners, you have crankers, you have seniors, you have juniors. So the odds are, if you go to a tournament like this, like let's say they put this pattern out every single day, we now know whether there's 108 in the field or 450 in the field, we know who's going to make the top 24. And we know who's got no chance. There is no going out to the truck and drilling a magic ball at this point. It's just you against this ridiculous excuse for an oil pattern for the next 3 days. I guarantee a guy, like, I'm going to use this kid as an example because he's got a great, bright future ahead of him, but he's proving my point right now. Wes's son, Jordan Malott. Jordan Malott, I think, averaged 160 or 165 today, unless he had some bigger back games.
Jordan Malott is he's in 107th at 232 under right now.
230, 200.
Kid's talented as anything. Throws it great.
So, yeah, and he averaged 170 today.
Yeah.
If this tournament was on the same pattern the next 2 days, does even 1 ounce of you think that Jordan Malott has a chance to get a check at 36th or make the top 24?
No, if I'm him, I'm not showing up the next 3 days.
Okay. So they must know how absurd the patterns are, and they probably want to prevent that because the last thing in the world you need with 108 entries is to have people withdraw. So at least there's the thought of, you know what, there's only 108 of us. I'm 100 pins out of the number, and tomorrow's a totally new tournament. It's a new day. I still have a chance. I think it's one actually way of subliminally luring the players to stay in the event, even if they know they're mathematically out of it after day one. And it's also to allow for all the varieties of styles that are competing in the event itself. That's why I think they're doing the multiple patterns. Plus, they've been on the multiple pattern binge for quite some time now. They've been doing it for years.
So I was going to bring this one up, and Nico kind of beat me to the punch on this one. 10 balls, every competitor. List them before you start. Yay or nay?
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I mean, I can't find the best way to. I think it should be 8 or 6. I think you eliminate bowling. Yeah, but if you to me, I'd rather see them make the lanes moderately hard and give the bowlers 6 bowling balls. Give them like a scoring pace of like you got to average 220 to make the top 24 or 215 to make the top 24, but you can only have 6 bowling balls. That is limiting the tools even more so.
That's relying on pure talent at that point. And the guy and the Belmo of the world or the Butters of the world can't run to the truck, just like Joe League Bowler, who may be making the run, doesn't have the access to have, right? Exactly. To go to the truck and drill a ball to say, hey, this would have lined up on the fresh in the morning. No, you're all the same thing.
Totally.
I like that.
If you're on the baseball field and then the ball goes through the webbing of your first baseman's mitt because your shortstop threw it to you too hard, you have 2 choices. You go to a backup glove or you figure out a way to salvage what you've got. Yeah. You don't just go to the truck and get a new glove and have somebody break it in for you.
And I don't think you can replace a ball off the 10. Once you list your 10, right? That's your 10 for the week.
Your 10 is selected before you throw your first shot of competition.
I would assume, like, unless a ball is damaged or ruined, that's probably the only way you could replace a ball. If I had to guess, that's probably the fair way to do it. That's
a great guess, and I'm going to go with you on that one. You definitely can't be penalized for something out of your control.
A mechanical problem or whatnot. See, this way you go down too. 6 balls and a spare ball. There you go.
I would just make it 6 or 6. 7 is fine if one's a spare ball. But then again, make sure you make people aware that the spare ball has to be used to shoot spares. Like you can't have ball 7 be a pitch black and then say, well, this is also one of my 7 to use as a strike ball. That's why I just said make it 6. Because if you make it 6, bowlers that throw a spare ball will always pack their spare ball, and they'll take 5. and bowlers that don't will have the one that they typically shoot a 10-pin or a 7-pin with all the time. So there's really no reason to make it 7. Just keep it at 6.
Now, I don't know how true this is.
Nico's very, very knowledgeable. I'm going to say that he's right on this because can you put it back up? You said you're allowed to change arsenals once you make it to match play. That's a nice incentive for the bowlers that made it through this shit show qualifying. Like I said, Nico's very, very knowledgeable.
He's smart, yeah.
Totally. So I'm going to say that that's a 100% accurate statement, and that's cool. I think they should allow it at that point. Give everybody the same, fair ground, fair game.
Yeah, you're pulling your hair out for what, 32 games of qualifying. It rewards you getting to the top 24.
Right.
It does reward you, and I'm looking at the scores here, and they are updated. They're not updated yet. By the way, Kevin McCune, how good is this guy? Oh my God.
The whole McCune family, man. They've got some pretty fantastic bowling genes.
Yeah, Kevin McCune is second on the squad now at 71 over. He is and he throws it great. He throws it great.
He's really got a wonderful career in front of him. That is for sure.
So let's have a little fun. We'll get off the U.S. Open topic for a minute. I think we've already bashed and critiqued the U.S. Open enough. So last week, when they announced the USBC Hall of Famers, and this is where I got this idea from. So they announced Dave Ferraro going to the Hall of Fame. Fantastic player, whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Riggles had said when he made his article or whatnot, the most underrated player ever was Dave Ferraro. Agree or disagree?
Most underrated ever?
Maybe not ever, but one of the most underrated players.
He is. It was definitely underrated for how fantastic he was. I don't think he was the most underrated player ever.
No.
He won Player of the Year in 1992. Yeah. But as far as getting overlooked, yeah. I mean, there was a period where Brunswick wouldn't sign him to a full contract. They would only sign him to a shirt staff. So when he won Player of the Year, he's wearing a Brunswick Phantom shirt every week, but he won virtually every tournament with either a powder blue hammer or a black turbo. So in that respect, yeah, he's a little bit underrated. I don't know what qualifies as the most underrated pro, but yeah, he's definitely one of them. So yeah, I'll give him that.
Johnny, I think Ferraro also was doomed when Resin came out. He was done. The Resin ended Dave's career. Nothing against Ferraro, but Resin ended his career.
There were a couple of guys that fell suspect or fell subject to that. I remember him winning that one in the arena. He was still on friggin' Brunswick shirt staff, wearing a Rhino Pro shirt, but he was throwing a critical mass. But he had the long hair. I mean,
the curly thing going.
Yeah, a lot of bowlers that happened to. I mean. No, we can't say. Let's see. Who else would Resin really hurt?
I'll give
Bob Vespi.
Bob Vespi. Anybody? Chris Warren.
Chris Warren, totally.
Anybody that could hook it with urethane. That trick went away when the Excalibur came out.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the Excalibur made Mark McDowell and made his career, and then he was one of the guys that fell subject to not being able to keep up with Resin once it fully came out.
I would assume he's referring to Ferraro.
I think so. I guess so.
I'll give you an underrated player. I'm going to go with a very underrated. And I know you have a big heart for this guy.
Okay.
He only won one title. So if you look at the history books, you're going to see this guy only has one career win. He won over $1 million in his career. Going back to Ferraro, I will say Mike Edwards is one of the most underrated players the PBA Tour's ever seen.
That's a good one.
It's a fantastic one. I mean, this guy was not. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. When you compare the guys that won one title, him and Phil Ringen are the perfect example. Mike Edwards' career blows Phil Ringener's out of the water. No disrespect to Phil Ringener, but you look at those two. Mike Edwards was a hell of a player.
Absolutely.
And very, very underrated.
I agree with that one.
I give you another one. This guy's a Hall of Famer. another Hall of Famer. I always thought he was a little bit underrated, and people didn't really, I said, respect his ability. Dave Houston.
Really?
I've heard that from a couple people. He's a little underrated, you know. How do you say a guy's won the U.S. Open 3 times is underrated?
Because he was never really thrown into the limelight. Like here's another prime example, because somebody that I think, and this is kind of on the wavelengths of you, somebody that I think is insanely underrated is Danny Wiseman. Danny Wiseman's got, what is that, 9 or 10 titles, major champion. He's always had his own flair. He's always been a little flamboyant. He's always been a little bit different. And yet somehow, some way, it's like, oh, it's Danny Wiseman. Nah, he doesn't need to be on staff with this company or that company. Like, nobody ever wanted him on a company. And I don't know if he's even been on the ballot for the Hall of Fame yet.
Oh, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, there goes that. Anyway, I still think he's underrated.
No, I could agree with you on that one. Nico has another good one. Ready for this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Underrated?
I don't know if you would say underrated.
Tony was gone too soon.
Exactly. That's the best way to say it. We would never know.
I can't. No.
We would never know the answer.
He's gone too soon. I'll tell you who was underrated, though. Dave Traber.
Stop.
I swear to God, I think. Listen,
you better have some facts to back this one up.
David Traber made 30 bowling shows, 35. He won 4 or 5 titles.
And a major.
Bowled won the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be good at everything if you're great at something. Now, I want you to just think about that for a second. Let's bring baseball into the picture for a minute. Mike Piazza, catcher,
Okay.
scale of 1 to 10, like a 4. His arm, scale of 1 to 10, like a 2. Like, I don't think Mike Piazza was ever going to throw anybody out at second base, right?
No, not really.
But Mike Piazza hitting 30 dingers a year and batting over 300, and 15 of the homers went to right field and 15 of them went to left. That's a bat that I'll keep in my lineup for 10 or 15 years, and I'll pay him millions of dollars a year because I know he's going to produce me runs. That is how I feel about David Traber. He may not have the best looking game. He may not be able to he doesn't have a lot of tricks. He may only be able to do one thing, but he knows how to do that one thing really, really, really well.
Yeah, but when it's not there, if it's not there, where is David Traber compared to Mike Edwards?
David Traber has a more successful career than Mike Edwards. So how can you say that Mike Edwards is more career-wise, numbers-wise, for while he was out there? Year to year, Traber's numbers were always better than Eddie's. Even in 1994, when Eddie won his lone title at the Foresters. So that's where it gets a little tricky. Like I would say that obviously overrated and underrated is a completely opinionated thought to begin with. Like I think that what's his name? I think Tim Chris was overrated for his entire career. I think that Tim Chris hit a 3 or 4 years where, and what Charlie just said, quiet personalities also fly under the radar.
Absolutely.
Ryan Schaefer is underrated, but Ryan Schaefer knows he's underrated, so he tries to make it known that he's underrated. So it's the craziest thing in the world when you're talking about people that are underrated, because the ones that know about it come off as dicks for trying to point out the things they've done that make them deserving of not being underrated. And then the other guys that keep their mouths shut, we say are underrated because they don't say anything. Tim Chris is probably the nicest guy to ever step foot on the lanes. He's a fantastic bowler. I don't ever think that Tim Chris has a chance in today's game to win 1 title, let alone 7 or 8.
No, not anymore. His game is obsolete. He can't.
Yeah.
Couldn't compete on today's game.
So there's a guy that I've always thought was overrated.
Give me another one. I'll give you another underrated one. I think this guy's the most underrated player on tour right now.
Most underrated?
100%.
Okay.
Richie Allen. I'm Dick Allen.
Richie Allen is an underrated player for sure. But it's okay because Richie's career kind of matches the player that he is. I feel like what he's produced in bowling matches up to what his career numbers say. He's like I'm here, I'm hot for a few weeks, I'm cold for a few weeks, I'm steady when they're really hard. I get my checks. I make my cuts. I can afford to be out here every year, and I'm going to win a couple times here and there.
All right, so the scores are updated really quick. That guy, Thomas, how do you say his last name, from Finland?
Should be Keiko.
Keiko, he's at 116 over. He did bowl 290. So he's high on the squad right now.
Wow.
He's 116 over after 3. McCune is second on the squad at 79 over. And then I'm looking, Michael Martell, lefty, high lefty on the squad at 38 over.
For 2?
For 3.
For 3, that's not bad at all.
Butters is +7. Lavoie is bowling now. Troop is bowling now. I mean, I scroll to the bottom. I know that's terrible, but Kevin Williams, 95 under after 3.
Oh, wow.
Martin Larson, 74 under. Parker, 75 under after 3. Tommy Jones, 65 under after 3.
Wow. Did not expect that.
No, TJ is 150, 2-0, 170 to start the block.
Wow. Between him and Malott, I'm shockingly surprised at those two guys struggling.
And Tommy won it on the garbage at Carolina, that 1-1, 40 feet.
Yeah, he sure did.
I'm trying to think, maybe now we'll go with an overrated guy. We can think.
Okay.
Overrated. You
Logically,
got one ready to go.
I do. Logically, by numbers, who's overrated? Randy Peterson.
You know what? That was the one I was thinking of too.
12
and no
or 13.
Disrespect to Randy.
He's got 13 PBA titles. Shoe in for the Hall of Fame. A lot of people don't know is we always talk about win percentages on television. They talk about Wiseman. They talk about Tommy Jones. Nobody ever talks about Randy Peterson's win percentage on TV.
No,
Randy only made
really up there.
Randy won 13 titles, but he only made 35 shows. Think about
He
that.
bowled for a title half the time he was on TV.
Mm-hmm. Right. And his only major came in the national championship in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
He did knock on the door a few more times. Obviously, everybody remembers the Tournament of Champions and the TPC with the 8-pin. So Randy's a guy that, because of when he gets there and his big bubbly personality, he's a handsome guy, he's friendly with the crowd, he knows how to work it, he knows exactly what to do. Randy's overrated in that respect, because when you look at a career of, say, a Randy Peterson compared to Chris Barnes, because Chris Barnes has only got 3 more PBA titles than Randy Peterson does. I think Barnes may be up to 20 now.
Barnes is like around 18, I think. He's not at 20
Okay.
Yet. Yeah, he's right around 20.
It's crazy to think that Chris Barnes only has 5 more wins than Randy Peterson. Yeah. Because I don't even put those two in the same playing field. Right. So that's one that I consider to be overrated.
How about I'm going to give you one underrated one. This guy.
Stop.
Steve
My dog's
Jarris.
biting my feet. Sorry.
That's right. Steve Jarris.
Overrated?
Underrated.
Underrated.
Very underrated.
We're really sticking with what the Tapster said, because so far every guy we're saying is underrated is because they're all quiet. They're all
okay.
Quiet personalities.
How about this one for an overrated guy?
Okay.
And this guy was the first one to ever do this, and he couldn't compete the normal way, so he did something that nobody else did, and came back on tour and took his thumb out of the ball.
Mike Miller,
overrated player.
If he was ever looked at like he was overrated, I mean, no, but they always say nobody paid attention to him prior to the thumb coming out.
Yeah,
and then he did innovate it to some extent when he did. I could say I guess that Miller was an overrated player, that he found a trick that worked for a 10-year stint.
Again, not a career like Mike Edwards.
Yeah, that's true.
Why does
pisses me off that Eddie only won once?
Why did that guy? He never could win. Okay, here's a good one for you. Who do you think is the most snake-bitten guy in the history of the PBA? We get to the show all the time. Win here and there, but he's always had the worst luck when he got to TV.
Ryan Schaefer.
I got 2. I got 3 then. I'll put Schaefer on that list.
I'll go with Ryan Schaefer. I'm sorry, Evelyn's going nuts.
No, Evelyn's fine. Love it. How about Barnes?
Yeah, for a period there, he But Barnes has also won 18 times. Schaefer's only won 4 or 5.
Barnes could easily have 30 titles. He should have 30 titles.
Marshall Holman should have 45.
And I'll give Parker could have another 15 to his as well. He went a bad stretch in the 90s where, remember that? What, he bowled 240, 250?
0 for his last
life,
14 0 for 14 in televised matches from 1995 through 97.
Yeah, I mean, give him half of those, he's at 42.
But then he comes out and he wins the AC Delco and the Showboat back-to-back to open 97. And then he continues to win like 15 more titles between then and 2001. So he figured it out.
Here's a good one for you. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love Bob.
I love him so much. He's one of my idols.
Yeah.
Always has been. I've wanted to throw it like Robert for my entire bowling career. Is he overrated in the respect that his numbers don't match up with who the greats are? 100%. I think he's got 8 victories, a U.S. Open championship in 2000, and that's it. But another guy who, not like we were talking about Tony Reyes, but a guy who's fought injuries for a lot of his career that stopped him from being
because of his style.
He would have fallen out of the overrated category had it not been for injuries, and he would have just been one of the all-time greats.
How about Mike Machuga?
100% overrated.
Really?
Hang on a second. I know because I love Chooks.
Yeah, I got to hear this.
And here is exactly why.
Okay.
Why I feel this way. Chooks basically taught me a lot of tricks about bowling. He opened my brain to a lot of different things especially when I was trying to be on tour.
Okay.
But every time Chooks would talk about something, he would put himself in the bracket of, when me, Brian, and Norm do this, or when Norm, Brian, and me go and do this. Like almost putting himself in the Voss Duke category because those were his best friends on tour. You are not Brian Voss or Norm Duke. I'm sorry. Like when Fagan and Bill O'Neill and Jason Belmonte were all rooming together and they all had 3 or 4 titles, it was okay for Bill O'Neill and Mike Fagan to talk about Mike Fagan and Jason Belmonte like they were a trio. It was okay. Chooks always felt that his game was so perfect that he had the talent to be the Duke and the Voss, at least when he would talk about it. So I would say that he was overrated because he gave off the vision and the appearance like he was the best player on earth next to Voss and Duke. So I always looked at that like you can't say that until you start doing things that actually prove it. I love lifting weights, but I would never, ever, ever put myself in the same discussion as Chris Bumstead or Kai Green. I would talk about how I have my own journey, and those guys inspire me to come as far as I have in weightlifting, but I would never ever talk like I'm supposed to be the next physique champion or the next Mr. Olympia, or I should get a movie role because my body is so beautiful. That's all bullshit. I never thought that Fagan was overrated. I thought that, again, his time on tour was too short, and I'm a little skewed in my thoughts on that one because I grew up idolizing Fagan also.
We bowled with him as kids.
Yeah, so I thought that, 2-time major champion, multiple titles, made a bunch of TV shows. I don't think he's overrated because he wasn't out there long enough.
How
but
about
the
this
Machuga
one?
That definitely
That's a good one.
Go with overrated.
How about this one? This is another Hall of Famer. He was great with urethane. He won maybe 2 or 3 times with resin, and then he kind of just went off, kind of stopped bowling when resin came out. Dave Ozio.
Well, if anything, I would say Ozio was underrated.
Yes, I agreed.
If anything,
agreed.
And he was a loudmouth too. I mean, goddamn, man, his side report interviews would last for they were Emmy acceptance speeches or like
I want to thank God for this and
by the time he was done with the sideline report, I knew what color his underwear were.
But dude, there was not many guys that could play 1-2 better than David Ozio.
And
Lord.
He was poetry in motion and 11, 12 titles. I don't know if Ozio ever won a major.
Yeah, he won the Firestone.
Did he win the Firestone?
He
in 1991, Player of the Year.
He won Player of the Year. Underrated player, 100%.
Yeah, he's done more for the sport than he's been given credit for. I would give him an underrated player rating.
Absolutely, and that's a Hall of Famer right there. Would you say
Totally.
you think Doug Kent's underrated?
100%. Because Doug blossomed later on in his career. Doug, remember earlier I said you don't have to be great at everything. You just got to be great at one thing.
Yeah.
Dougie Fresh was always the guy that was always good at everything, but he was never great at something. Like what I mean is Doug could hook the lane, he could throw it straight, he could loft it, but he was good at all of it. And then one day he woke up and he got great at all of it. Like he learned how to kick everybody's ass. Everything clicked. And he became great at most of the things he does. He's one of the best bowlers that ever lived, Doug.
Yeah.
And I think he's definitely underrated because the beginning compared to what he did later years was sluggish.
I got one more.
Okay.
Scroggins.
I hate this one.
I know you do, but this is the perfect one that could fall both sides. Pre-sport bowling, right? You never heard from him. I mean, you did, but not regularly. Post 2005 Masters that he won, he is now the second coming of Earl Anthony.
Yeah.
So, under or over, or is he perfectly right in the middle?
Mike Scroggins overrated because the game that changed around him made him become the bowler that he was. He did not wake up one day and decide to revamp his game and work on curving the ball and throwing it straight. He woke up one day and they said, hey, bro, just so you know, for the next 5 years, we need you to throw the ball at the pins. Don't go away from the pins. You're going to be the best lefty in the world for the next 5 years if you keep doing exactly what you've done for your whole career. Mike Scroggins fell into a pot of gold in that respect, I think. I guess he was out on tour for 10 to 12 years and never eclipsed 25,000 for a single season in earnings. He won the 92 ARC Sacramento Open and against a 170 in the title match. He bowled 190, 170 on that show to win. So, I mean, we've seen Emmett Schutz win a PBA title. He was the guy that everything around him changed. Like, everything just changed when sport bowling was introduced, when he was allowed to do what he's wanted to do his whole career. And then it took him a year or so to remember how to do it. And that was it. There was no stopping him. But to this day, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think he's overrated. Yeah.
Okay. Two more. You ready?
Yeah.
Ron Palumbi. George Branham III.
George Brown III,
very underrated. Very underrated.
He was one I was going to mention. He was actually one of my list of three.
Yeah.
I always thought George was completely underrated. And another guy whose tour span didn't last long enough. He was
no, not at all.
You know, his last show I saw him on was in the Flagship Open in '97.
Blue Thunder.
Blue Thunder. Yep.
He threw so good. Oh my God, he threw great. George's game was fantastic.
It was sensational. I mean, think of it like Marshall Holman with not as quick a skiddly, mousy feet. Like,
yeah, his feet were
the shoulders and the head just never moved the whole way to the foul line.
And just hit it
solid as a rock.
And just hit the hell out of it at the bottom.
And Ron Palumbi, I think, was overrated. I thought that even though he was a World Open champion, again, a guy who's
a two-time major champion too.
Yeah, I think that his game, I don't know. I didn't think he brought enough to the table for what they compared him to.
Who are the ones that you had on your list that you were to say you have three?
I've always felt that Schaefer's underrated.
Absolutely.
George Branham was one on there for me. I always thought that Kelly Kaufman was underrated.
But he never won.
That's true. That's true. I always thought he was underrated. But no, you mentioned somebody else earlier who was on my list. And I had Randy Peterson.
Yeah, that's the over one right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many guys you could say is over.
Yeah, 100%. Now that's so like I hate to compare Scott Devers to Earl Anthony, but watching Scott Devers and watching Earl Anthony to me is the same thing.
Richie Wolf.
See, watching Richie Wolf is like watching Jason Couch or Parker to me. That's poetry in motion.
Minus the
It's
titles.
beautiful
Yeah.
to me.
Minus the
Rich,
titles.
see now, Richie Wolf was. How do you say he's overrated or underrated? Richie Wolf he's a fantastic bowler, but he doesn't know how to win. I'm sorry. It's the nicest fucking way to put it. He does not know how to win. Otherwise, he would have.
Like
There's
a
no way that
journeyman.
somebody with that beautiful of a game and that beautiful of a finishing position, that beautiful of a release doesn't win unless there's something missing up there. And that's, so I can't say that that guy is underrated or overrated. He's not a champion. So he's not even in the.
Ernie Schlegel.
Overrated.
Agreed. Hall of Famer,
Oh.
very overrated.
Overrated.
He's only known for one thing, really.
Yeah, being nuts.
There's your
Throwing it
loud,
straight as an arrow.
there's your loud personality. How about this? So, Frankie,
Nice.
that's a shot maker right there.
Well, so right. Case in point, right there. He's 874 through 4, so he's right on pace to average what the tournament leaders are averaging, just under 220.
Who's your pick, John? Let's wrap it up. I'll even make it a little more enticing. Does a lefty get to the show in the U.S. Open this week?
Yeah.
Really?
Do you mean the top 9? Because
No.
they're doing that, right?
No, I didn't. What do you mean top 9?
Yeah, so what they're doing is seeds 5 through 9. They bowl a televised stepladder on Saturday, and then the winner of that stepladder is the 5th seed in the Sunday show.
Oh, that's
which
interesting.
that was another positive that I liked about this week.
Oh, that's interesting then. So
I think
you have a lefty in the top 9.
I do.
Do you have a lefty going in the top 5 bowling for the Green Jacket?
Yes.
Which one?
Jesper.
Wow.
I've got Jesper.
Is he the only one you have?
Yes.
And who wins it?
Who wins the Open?
Who wins the Open
this year? Chris Barnes.
That was the one I wanted to say too.
I think that because I'm a frequent listener of Beef and Barnsley's show, so I listened to him and Stu, who by the way Stu Williams also had a great first block.
Stu is 38 over, very respectable block.
I think that just listening to what Barnes' mentality going into it, his thought process is it's right. And every year that goes by, I know people say with age, certain things ail and this and that, but also something that happens with age is your brain grows. And Chris Barnes has all the tools to win it this year. And I think that this year it's not going to be won by the guy who can throw it the highest and the hardest.
Does Belmo make the show?
Yes.
So he makes a big run one of these 3 days.
Or just goes 50 over every day. There's no panic whatsoever in his mind, and there's certainly none in mine. Belmo makes the top 9 too.
And I believe he's out of the number. He is out of the number right now. Where does Mookie finish?
I have no idea. I think, honestly, Mookie's going to finish somewhere in the top 3rd, or maybe just on the outside looking in.
Does Mookie
a check? I'll give Mookie a 36 to 45 finish.
Does Mookie grab a check?
That's a 1 in 10 chance in what I just gave you, because I think last check is 36th.
Yeah, 36 is the last cash spot. All right.
So,
Go Bowl League.
Okay.
How you feeling? Back is good? You feeling good?
Everything's good, man.
Fantastic.
The lanes have been super duper easy at South Point on Tuesday, so I keep moseying on in and shooting my 730, 740, and winning 3 of my 4 points, and I'm going home happy. I drilled a purple reactive hammer to bring to league tonight.
Ooh, okay.
And I'm going to take my top speed out of the bag, and so tonight it's just going to be Defender Hybrid, purple reactive hammer, and a T-zone. It's a good name there, Mike.
There's an underrated player too.
That's an under. Yeah, we're gonna go underrated for sure. And most snakebit, he's definitely up there. Mark Baker lost a lot of tournaments on TV that he shouldn't have.
Correct. Well, Mark Baker did win. He touched the winner's circle a couple of times. All right, John, go Bowl League. I'll be back next Tuesday. Maybe we'll recap the Open if John wants to sit in again next week. We
I'm
always,
off on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
oh,
I'm
so
here
you are,
whenever
so,
need me.
and every Tuesday
Yeah.
you're off. Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm
Good to
officially
know.
off Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So
All right, John, we'll reconvene during the week, I'm sure. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Until next week, stay well, everybody.